Yo, tapping in real quick for this UFC fight night that's going to be taking place back in the Apex between Brandon, Royval, and Tatsuro, Taira. This video right here, this is the final thoughts, the final talks, the final answer, call it what you will, the final lap. We're going to run through this motherfucker one more again and let that be that with that. You know what I'm talking about? I'll do my best is not to hold y'all ear hostage for too long. And, you know, let's go ahead and dive into it, man. First fight of the night. And again, remember, not necessarily sure what the lineup's going to be come fight night, but this is the one that I have in front of me, so it very much so is the one that we're going to rock with. You know what I'm talking about? Let's go ahead and dive into it, man. That first fight of the night, that's Clayton versus Lucas. Clayton's a minus 175 favorite to Lucas's plus 145 underdog. You know what I'm talking about? And the pick still is very much so Clayton to be the one to get this one done in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And again, I'm not necessarily sure how Clayton's going to go about being able to secure this victory over Lucas, as he is a young man that is proven to be able to get the job done wherever the fight may take place. Listen, both of these young men have proven that they can get the job done wherever the fight may take place. Whether that's via KO, TKO, inside the distance, via submission, or via winning a decision. You know what I'm talking about? Both of these young men have looked quite well as of yet up against the level of opposition that they've been competing against. You understand what I'm saying to you? Very much a prospect versus a prospect, and very much a situation where none of us should be arguing either one of these individuals' statistics in any way, shape, form, or fashion, as neither one of these individuals have been tested against a legitimate level of opposition for us to be doing so, in my personal opinion. You understand what I'm saying to you? Now, with what I've been able to go back and watch on both of these individuals, as much as I've been able to see, as much as I've been privileged to see, I gotta side with Clayton, man. I gotta side with Clayton. The body of work that he's been able to produce, in my personal opinion, the all-around body of work that he's been able to produce has been just a bit better, a bit cleaner, a bit crisper, call it maybe a bit more technical, call it whatever you want. I just like the body of work that I've seen produced from Clayton a bit better than what I've seen produced from Lucas in any of the matchups I've seen Lucas in. Now, with that being said, again, prospect versus prospect, and neither one of these individuals have been tested against a legitimate level of opposition for us to really be arguing. It should be a minus 110 pick 'em in my personal opinion, but it's not. And Clayton's the pick. Moving on. Dan, he's a plus 155 underdog. The Cody's minus 185 favorite. You know what I'm talking about? And the pick still is very much so Cody to be the one to get this one done in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Not necessarily sure how Cody's going to go about securing the victory over Dan, but I am quite confident that he's going to be able to do so. Not high on Dan in any way, shape, form, or fashion, or the body of work that he's been able to produce, or lack thereof. You understand what I'm saying to you? Nothing about this young man impresses me or moves me. Not the body of work, nothing about the resume, nothing about this, nothing jumps off the paper, just nothing. Nothing special about this young man, in my personal opinion. With that being said, Cody has looked good up against the level of opposition that Cody has looked good up against. You understand what I'm saying to you? And he just hasn't been tested against a legitimate level of opposition yet. I do believe, from what I have seen from both of these young men, Cody still does possess enough capabilities to secure a victory over Dan, man, in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Whether the finish presents itself and he finds it inside the distance, or he just beats Dan via unanimous decision. Hopefully 30-27 clean sweep across the board, and he doesn't even let this young man get a round off. You know what I'm talking about? But it is what it is, man. Not high on the Dan side in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And while I'm a bit higher on the Cody side, this is still a prospect. Still an individual that has not been tested against a legitimate level of opposition as of yet. And competing against Dan Argueta, securing a victory against Dan Argueta in any way, shape, form, or fashion will not allow me to gauge where your ceiling may or may not be inside the UFC. Not based off of performance against Dan. Fuck out of here. You know what I'm talking about? So I am confident that what I've seen from him is enough to get the job done against an individual like Dan Argueta. You know what I'm talking about? And hopefully he gets paired up with at least what I believe to be a legitimate prospect moving forward, so we can gauge something. We're not gonna get anything off of this unless he fucking loses. If he loses, we're gonna get all we need to know. If he goes in this motherfucker and Dan Argueta gets him the fuck up out of there, then we're gonna know absolutely all we need to know. Questions answered. Enough said. Say less. Kick rocks, kid. You know what I'm talking about? For real. Moving on. We have Chris plus 300 underdog on the money line to Junior. One of the Taira brothers minus 380 at the time that I wrote this down on the on the money line, man. Minus 380 for Junior Taira. Y'all motherfuckers think I'm crazy for some of the picks that I make on some of these underdogs. Who the fuck dropped these money lines, man? Something wrong with them. Might really need to get their head checked, man. Minus 380 for either one. You could put both of the Junior. You could put both Junior and Justin, right? Either way you look at it. You could put both of the Taira brothers in the octagon with some of these heavyweights, and they still wouldn't amount to a minus 380, in my personal opinion, man. Huh? Stop it. Stop it, man. You know what I mean? Stop it. You could put both Taira brothers in the octagon with Curtis Blades, and together they wouldn't equal minus 380. Curtis gonna power double one, boom! Dump him so hard he probably gonna knock him out. He gonna turn around, boom, boom! Two-piece the other one and knock him out. They not gonna look like a minus 380 if they in the octagon together, man. That's just me going off, though. That's just my personal opinion, man. These motherfuckers is crazy, minus 380, man. Let's talk about Taira, the minus 380 favorite in the heavyweight division. 1-3 inside the UFC. Both of these men have 4 fights in the UFC. Taira's 1-3. His one win coming over an individual who was 4-4 in the UFC. I didn't write that name down, but if I'm not mistaken, it was Parker Porter or somebody like that. You know what I'm talking about? But either way you look at it, Taira's 1-3 inside the UFC, and rightfully so. He's a fucking bum in my personal opinion, as far as mixed martial arts is concerned. You know what I mean? Chris is 2-2 inside the UFC. At least his 2 wins come over individuals that had quite a bit of experience inside the UFC. One being 10-13 and the other being 5-9. Again, nobody to brag and boast about. Nothing magnificent, you know. Nothing spectacular about the Chris side of things, man. But in this heavyweight division, the body of work, or let's say again, the lack thereof, that Junior Taira has already shown us, man. We in the smaller octagon too. Chris is by far a better all-around mixed martial artist. Chris is gonna come in there and throw kicks to the legs, the outside, the calves, the insides. The motherfucker's gonna throw body kicks, spinning heel kicks. He might throw a flying knee. He's gonna be throwing the hands, working the body. I mean, the activity alone, the volume, the pressure, You know what I'm talking about? The movement, the way he's going to utilize that apex. How could I pass on a plus 300 dog tag next to Chris, man? You know what I'm talking about? Chris is the pick for me, but nothing's changed about that. Nothing's changed about any of my picks. You understand what I'm saying to you? But I'm not telling you to go out there and put Chris in your main parlays. I'm not telling you to go out there and bet Chris in any of your main bets or your main plays. I'm just telling you that Chris is very much so deserving so of a dog play in some way, shape, form, or fashion if you're looking for dog plays on this card, man. A significant dog. One of the biggest dogs on the card next to Hoffa. And I get it. Maybe you're uncomfortable with that. Maybe that scares you. When you're done watching this, go back and watch tape on Tafa. You could probably watch it all. There's not a whole lot to motherfucking gather. Then go back and watch your tape on motherfucking Chris, man. Toph is not going in there and finding the finish. He's not clipping and disconnecting Chris from his consciousness. He's not taking him down and searching for his submission. He's not producing a better all-around body of work over the course of 15 minutes. Not in my personal opinion. You understand what I'm saying to you? So, for those who don't like the dog in this matchup and think Junior Tafa, rightfully so, should be a minus 380 against Chris, consider this a complete pass. You know what I'm talking about? Because I don't want you to take it too literally and go parlaying this motherfucker up and, you know what I mean, tapping in later on as if you weren't advised otherwise. You know what I'm talking about? It's a dog play, and it's a dog I like, man. Nico versus Themba. Nico's a plus 225 underdog to Themba's minus 280 favorite on the money line for whatever reason. I don't know. Themba has looked fairly decent as of yet in his UFC run. And, you know, fairly decent against the level of opposition that he was competing against in his route to the UFC. Since coming to the UFC, he's looked fairly decent inside the UFC, as can be, you know, shown in his record in the UFC, 4 fights, and he's 3-1. But those 3 victories over an individual who was 2-3 in the UFC, an individual who was 1-2 in the UFC, and an individual who was 2-5 in the UFC, and neither of which were of a legitimate level of opposition. You understand what I'm saying to you? So those wins, in my personal opinion, they hold no weight and they mean absolutely shit. You know what I'm talking about? With all due respect to Themba, they mean nothing and they hold no weight. You know what I'm talking about? We're on the other side of things. I do not believe, at least not me for one, I don't believe we need to run down Nico Price's resume. It speaks for itself. Undeniably incomparable as far as level of opposition that he's been competing against for far much longer. And there's no significant age gap, height, reach, or anything between these 2 individuals. Themba will not go out there and beat Nico Price via unanimous split or majority decision, in my personal opinion. He will not produce the better all-around body of work over the course of 15 minutes, man. You know what I mean? I like Nico Price at plus 225, just like I liked him against Alex Morono. And look what he did in his last matchup against Alex Morono. People were down on him because Robbie Lawler knocked him out in his retirement fight. First and foremost, it's the ruthless. And I don't give a fuck how hard the punch looked to the naked eye. Alex's punches don't look hard neither, but look what the fuck they do and listen to the thud they leave on a motherfucker when he lands on you. Understand what I'm saying to you? So you cannot discredit Nico Price for getting slumped by Robbie Lawler in his retirement fight, man. Get the fuck up out of here. The ruthless one can get anybody out of there at any given time, even right now today. You know what I'm talking about? Catch him on an off day, come out the gym, and get out of pocket if you want. Swing on him and watch what comes back. You know what I'm talking about? So you can't get down on him, but people were down on him. And look what he did to Alex Morono. 5 out of 5 on the takedowns. The volume numbers was up there. I mean, just completely completely produced the all-around better body of work absolutely everywhere over the course of 15 minutes. And I'm not comparing Morono to Themba. I know one thing has nothing to do with the other and all that, but it's all worth consideration, man. And Nico Price right now, man, Nico Price at any given time, I don't think Themba walks away victorious, man. And for individuals who think Themba might, you know, find a finish inside the distance, if anybody gets clipped and disconnected from their consciousness, in my personal opinion, it'll be Themba via a vicious elbow or a combination strung together that probably ends with an elbow by Nico Price, man. He does not want to get in close with Nico Price, and there's no keeping Nico Price at range. You know what I'm talking about? Their frames match up very fucking well. I believe Nico might be about 2 or a year and some change, going to close to 2 years older than him. You know what I'm talking about? So they right there. And I just believe Nico to be the by far more dangerous individual out of the two, and the more well-rounded individual out of the two, who has undeniably been up against a higher level of opposition. So his statistics are legitimate in my personal opinion. You understand what I'm saying to you? And for Themba finding a submission, Themba might get himself submitted. Nico Price is no fucking joke with the chokes. You can go in there trying to wrestle, fuck him if you want, and he's gonna snatch up a limb. He's gonna fucking break something. He's vicious. His grip. I mean, listen, man. Play around if you want, man. Play around what you want if you want. That front choke, that guillotine choke, the triangle. I mean, he'll take a limb or he'll choke you the fuck unconscious if you decide you don't want to tap and you want to be tough. You understand what I'm saying to you? And he could knock you the fuck out or just beat you the fuck up over the course of 15 minutes. So I like Nico Price at plus 225 against Themba. I'm actually highly confident in Nico Price. He's one of my most confident picks on the card. But God forbid, you know, I put an underdog out there as one of my most confident picks. I don't want to frighten anybody, you know what I'm talking about? So we'll keep that away from most of the main plays. As far as these parlays are concerned, you can just consider him a dog play. I am very confident in that underdog. You understand what I'm saying to you? We'll just leave it at that. But again, for individuals that dig too deep into that, before you go off and run to the window and go crazy and parlay this man up and then come back to me, just call it a complete pass. You know what I'm talking about? Because I like the dog, and that might make y'all a bit uncomfortable. I just told y'all all the reasons I like him. I think he could, if he doesn't get Themba out of there inside the distance via KO, TKO, or via submission, I think he'll hurt him multiple times over the course of 15 minutes on the feet. I think he will bust him open with elbows. I think Nico will be the one securing takedowns if he so chooses to do so. And I think if Themba attempts to secure a takedown, he might find himself getting submitted, man. Now I'm talking about, or if he pushes Nico up against the cage, he might find himself getting some vicious elbows rain down on him to split him wide the fuck open. Nico's nasty like that. You know what I mean? That's why I like the underdog, but understandably so. When individuals have a plus money number next to their name, you know, it makes people a bit uncomfortable. So right now we got Clayton over Lucas, Cody over Dan. And for individuals who are, you know, wanting to lock all these picks in and then hold me to them and crucify me for them, maybe you just want to consider Chris versus Junior and Nico versus Themba complete pass type situations, because I like the significant dogs, man. You know what I mean? Plus 300 and plus 225, gonna look real fucking nice wrapped together. You know what I mean? 2 legs, $20 at plus 300 and plus 225 wrapped together on the prelims. You know what I mean? It's worth a motherfucking $20 roll of the dice for me, man. You know what I mean? Moving on, we have Jonathan Pierce, who's a minus 135 favorite to Pat Sabatini's plus 110 underdog. This was at the time that I wrote this down, which was earlier. That may have changed. Pat could be, you know, a little bit more of a dog, or he could be even money right now. Things could be going his way. I don't know. I got to check in on that when I put this parlay video together a little bit later on. You know what I'm talking about? Jonathan Pierce is the pick for me. You know what I'm talking about? And if we want to chop it up about this one real quick, let's chop it up about this one real quick. I personally believe Pat Sabatini to be the more dangerous individual out of the two on the mat. He's the more technically sound when this fight hits the ground out of these two, in my personal opinion. Now I'm talking about, I believe Jonathan Pierce to be the more dangerous individual out of these two on the feet in the striking department. He is the more technically sound and more diverse individual out of the two in the striking department. You know what I'm talking about? I also believe Jonathan Pierce to have both the wrestling and grappling advantages in this matchup, both offensively and defensively, wrestling and grappling, just all around wrestling and grappling advantage in this matchup. You understand what I'm saying to you? If this thing finds itself on the mat, Pat can definitely find a submission and get Jonathan Pierce out of there inside the distance via submission. No questions asked. It's not a thought in my mind. He does not want to play around down there on the ground for too long with that young man, if for any time at all. You understand what I'm saying to you? Pat can get himself clipped and disconnected from his consciousness on the feet in the striking department from Jonathan Pierce. You understand what I'm saying to you, in my personal opinion? Or he could just get pieced up over the course of 15 minutes for Pierce to produce the better body of work on the feet in the striking department over the course of 15 minutes to secure a decision. You understand what I'm saying to you? I like Jonathan Pierce's wrestling and grappling advantage, both offensively and defensively. For him, I like for him to use that to keep this fight on the feet. That's why I like Pierce to beat Pat the fuck up. You know what I'm talking about? Because I know he doesn't want to go to the ground with this young man. I know he knows that's the easiest route for Pat to secure a victory against him. We've seen him get submitted already. You know what I'm talking about? We've seen Pat get clipped and hurt already. You know what I'm talking about? So Pat can very well, very much so, lock up the submission if it finds itself on the mat for any amount of time. Just like Jonathan Pierce could lock up the KO TKO inside the distance from clipping and disconnecting Pat from his consciousness, man. You know what I mean? It's a dangerous fight. It's a close fight. It's going to be a competitive fight. But I believe Jonathan Pierce's wrestling and grappling advantage will allow him to keep this fight upright, which will allow him to produce the better body of work over the course of 15 minutes to secure the unanimous decision, 2 rounds to 1. Maybe we find ourselves in a split situation, split decision type of situation with both of their names getting read off. But I would still say that Jonathan Pierce is going to get the nod in that situation as well, based off of volume on the feet and damage. You understand what I'm saying to you? He's just got to use that defensive wrestling and that defensive grappling to keep this fight upright, because Pat is the more technical, jiu-jitsu practitioner. You know what I mean? Jonathan Pierce is the more well-rounded, all-around, well-rounded mixed martial artist. You understand what I'm saying to you? Pat's dangerous on that ground, but Pat is not Sean Brady, and he's not Andre Petrowski when it comes to the wrestling and grappling departments. He's very much so just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, when it comes to the jiu-jitsu department, though. You understand what I'm saying to you? Pierce needs to keep this fight upright and piece Pat up to, turn away yet another prospect, as Pierce was the first one to turn away Christian Rodriguez, regardless of how anybody feels about it. You know what I'm talking about? Pierce knows how to go out there and get the job done. He just cannot use his all-around, game. He can't lock up them takedowns and secure them takedowns, because I don't necessarily know that he's going to be able to stay safe on top. And Pat is very capable of transitioning and creating, a wild scramble on that mat, which he'll probably come out getting the best of. You know what I mean? Snatching the neck, a limb, something in some way, shape, form, or fashion to have Pierce tapping. You know what I'm talking about? So Pierce just needs to keep the fight upright, and he'll be all right. You know what I mean? In my personal opinion. As long as it doesn't hit the mat, it's his fight. He's winning. He's not losing, man. And he might clip old boy inside the distance for a vicious KO TKO. You know what I'm talking about? Or he might just piece him up, stuff the majority of the takedowns. If he gets taken down, scoop, get the fuck right back up because he don't want to play around down there. You know what I mean? But it's question marks. It is question marks because if Pat can get him down, he could be in trouble early. Quick, fast, and in a hurry. This shit could be over. You know what I mean? I don't think Pierce can submit Pat, but Pat can definitely submit Pierce. I don't think Pat can crack and knock out Pierce, but Pierce can definitely crack and knock out Pat. You understand what I'm saying to you? And as long as he can keep it upright, he can produce the better body of work to, you know, turn another prospect back around and send him to the drawing board. You know what I'm talking about? Moving on, CJ plus 210 underdog against Ram. I don't know how to say Ram name. We're not even going to get into all that. He's a minus 265 favorite. At least he was when I wrote this one down. And, you know, this is a complete pass. I'm taking the dog. I'm taking the dog because Ram, he's got to prove. He's got to make me a believer. He's got proving grounds to cover, in my personal opinion, like much of these individuals do. Much of these individuals need to do. You understand what I'm saying to you? I don't care if you're 17-1. I don't care if you're 17-0. I don't care if you're 27-0 when you come into the UFC. You know what I mean? And I don't care about the body of work you've been able to produce or how good you've looked en route to whatever your record is. You've done so, and it's been produced up against a certain level of opposition, which just isn't the same as what's over here. Shit's different. You understand what I'm saying to you? So it very much just is what it is, man. Proving grounds need to be covered. Much like I said about old boy that was fighting Chris Padilla. He was 25-5 or 25-4, but that came from over there, with all due respect. And over there is just a different level of opposition. And over here, the shit's different. You're still a prospect over here. I don't give a fuck if you got 30 fights. You know what I'm talking about? It's 30 fights over there against a different level of opposition. It's not the same over here. You still in your first fight over here. You know what I mean? Or your first few fights over here. You're very much so a prospect amongst the prospects over here. And now you're competing against a different level of opposition. You understand what I'm saying to you? So when these individuals come in here with these immaculate records that have looked so good and have accumulated so many finishes inside the distance, that shit don't move me, man. CJ has already proven that he is you know, what level of opposition he is and what level of opposition he belongs competing against. And he's pretty much shown us where his ceiling is inside the UFC. The same cannot be said about Ram as of yet. So this is why, you know, I'm on the dog side of things, man. But call it what you want. Maybe another complete pass as far as you're concerned, man. Or maybe you like these new individuals coming in. You know what I'm saying? Old boy was a significantly bigger favorite than this, whatever his name was, when he came in against Charles Johnson. You know what I mean? And Charles Johnson sent him right the fuck back. You know what I mean? A lot of these individuals have come in and got spun right the fuck back around and sent right the fuck back. You know what I mean? Because it's different. So until he proves otherwise, I'm on the dog side, man. You know what I mean? Maybe he gets this one done and gets it done in spectacular fashion, and we see what happens, you know, moving forward. But you got to make me a believer. Go in there and dust CJ off and then get lined up with Azu and dust Azu off and just keep on keeping on, and maybe we'll talk about you down the road. But as of right now, I'm on the dog side of things. We got Chitty at minus 185 against Jared. A fight I want absolutely nothing to do with. I'm not high on either guy from either side, but with that being said, you know, I do like the Jared side just a bit more. I think he's you know, a more well-rounded mixed martial artist. And if he so chooses to do so, he could get this one down to the mat and search for a submission. To get this one done inside the distance, which in my personal opinion would be his easiest route to victory against Chitty. Just slip up under one of those combinations, wrap your arms around him. He's not really a power double guy. He likes to get in close and trip you. You know what I'm talking about? So Get up under that motherfucking combination, wrap your arms around him, and go ahead to motherfucking Steiner brother him. You know what I mean? Belly to belly him. Do whatever you want to do to him. Get him down, work for that ground and pound, look for that submission, and get it done inside the distance. Not a fight I want anything to do with, but Jarrett is very much so the pick. And he is a dog at plus 150. Josh at plus 125 against Abdul's minus 150. Abdul is still very much so the pick to, you know, just go out there and probably smother Josh, you know what I mean? Possibly get him out of there inside the distance via KO, TKO from the top position, ground and pound, silverback type shit, you know what I'm talking about? But he might just get him out of there, you know, he might just secure the victory via unanimous decision. 2 rounds to 1, maybe 3 rounds to none. Maybe he goes out there and secures takedowns in absolutely every round. You know what I'm talking about? At least 1 or 2. And with that being said, he might only need to secure 1 or 2 takedowns to pound Josh Frem the fuck up out of there. I don't really necessarily think Abdul is at much of a submission threat when he, based off of, you know, the frames. Josh is long, he is lanky. Abdul is one of those head and shoulders, no neck having motherfuckers, you know what I'm talking about? But in my personal opinion, if Josh tries to lock up a triangle, Abdul will pick his motherfucking ass. Matt Hughes, very much so, like right here, like Matt Hughes picked old boy up, take his ass Carlos Snooten, you know what I mean? Take him for a ride and dump him on his motherfucking shit. Don't take him over there and sit him up on top of the octagon, but it'll pick him up, boom, and fucking powerhouse him down to the floor and possibly knock him out. I'm not really worried of a submission coming from Frem, but it is what it is. You know what I'm talking about? I like Abdul to either clip him and disconnect him from his consciousness or produce the better body of work over the course of 15 minutes to win via decision. My bad. My shit dry as a motherfucker. D-Rod versus Alex, man. D-Rod's a minus 205. Alex is a plus 170. I like D-Rod to be able to go out there and get this one done via unanimous decision, 2 rounds to 1. Possibly hurt Alex somewhere over the course of 15 minutes. But, you know, it's going to be close. It's going to be competitive. You know what I mean? It sucks. D-Rod just, you know, had that matchup with Kelvin Gastelum. Now he's got to have a matchup with Alex Morono in the Apex. And Alex will be moving around. He will be utilizing that motherfucking smaller cage. You know what I'm talking about? And he will be throwing his motherfucking, his little bit of volume out there. I don't necessarily believe he'll be able to secure any takedowns against D-Rod. And I think D-Rod will land the cleaner, crisper, better body of work over the course of 15 minutes on the feet in the striking department. But there are question marks on this fight if we are being honest, man. D-Rod is the pick. D-Rod is the favorite at minus 205. The Alex is plus 170. But Alex has proven to be one of those individuals who can come out there and just fuck a motherfucker's night up, man. You know what I mean? And take this, you know, take a dumbass split decision or majority decision win. But in my personal opinion, it's not going to be one of those nights. I think D-Rod should be able to secure this one. And I ain't going to say relatively easily, but depends on what Alex we get, how hard that weight cut is for him. You know what I'm talking about? Corey, plus 125 underdog against Julia. And I feel the same about this one as I do about CJ and Ron. Julia still has proven rounds to cover. She's looked good in her route to the UFC. You understand what I'm saying to you? I picked old girl to get her up out of there last time and produce that better body of work over the course of 15 minutes, which Knudsen absolutely did. You understand what I'm saying to you? And I'm not comparing Corey to Knudsen, but it very much so is what it is. I know one thing has nothing to do with the other, but Corey has undeniably been up against a higher level of opposition. In my personal opinion, her wins and her losses, she has some good ones. You know what I'm talking about? And Julia she still has proven grounds to cover, man. She hasn't faced the level of opposition that Corey has. She hasn't beaten the level of opposition that Corey has. And she may not, in her own right, even be the level of opposition that Corey is. You understand what I'm saying to you? So the slight underdog Corey is the pick, but it is women's MMA, and understandably so. if anybody's uncomfortable with that pick, there are question marks on both sides. You understand what I'm saying to you? I just like Corey. Corey has proven the level of opposition that she is and that she belongs competing against, and where her ceiling is inside the UFC. Rom has done none of the above for me. You know what I'm talking about? Moving on, Grant minus 400 against Hoffa, and Grant still is very much so the pick. That minus 400 was when I wrote it down. He might be up over minus 500 by now. Who the fuck knows? This was earlier on today. You know what I'm talking about? But Grant's still the pick to go out there and get it done in some way, shape, form, or fashion. He can produce the better body of work absolutely everywhere over the course of 15 minutes, in my personal opinion, to secure the unanimous decision. 3 rounds to none. Maybe 2 rounds to 1, but more times than not, 3 rounds to none in this matchup, in my personal opinion. Obviously, as the money line suggests as well, he could maybe find the finish inside the distance via clipping and disconnecting Hoffa from his consciousness, because rolling around with Hoffa and searching for the submission will be the hardest route to victory, in my personal opinion, for Grant, and also will be giving Hoffa his easiest route to victory against Grant. So it will be unwise of him to do so, and any talk that we've had about his sharp IQ would go right out the window, and he would turn into one of those individuals whose IQ is now about as sharp as a fucking marble. You know what I'm talking about? So hopefully he just keeps this one upright, much like Jonathan Pearson, produces the better body of work absolutely everywhere in the striking department over the course of 15 minutes, man, and just pieces up Hoffa. Moving on. Brad is a plus 145 underdog against Jun, minus 170 favorite. And I don't necessarily get it, man. I honestly don't necessarily get it, man. I mean, okay, Jun looked exceptionally well en route to the UFC, and he has looked fairly decent since being in the UFC, you know, which can be shown by his record in the UFC, which is 7-3. But let's talk about those 7 victories. One comes over an individual who was 2-3 in the UFC. Another one comes over an individual who was 1-5 in the UFC. One comes over an individual who was 2-3 in the UFC again. And one comes over an individual who was 8-1 inside the UFC. One comes over an individual who was 3-4 in the UFC, and another one comes over an individual who was 1-5 inside the UFC, and one comes over an individual who was 5-7-1 inside the UFC, and neither of which out of the 7 were a very legitimate high level of opposition, in my personal opinion. You understand what I'm saying to you? On the other side of things, Brad's resume is undeniably incomparable as far as levels of opposition are concerned. You understand what I'm saying to you? And much like I said about Jose and Mario, that one very much, went down how it went down. Regardless of how I feel about it, it very much so is what it is. But much like I felt about that matchup, I feel the same way about this one. Jun Young Park will not lock up and secure takedowns in any way, shape, form, or fashion against Brad Tavares. So that submission is out the question. You understand what I'm saying to you? If he gets Brad Tavares down in the first round, locks up the submission and finds it inside the distance, salute to him, and I'll rub it in my chest, man. But I gotta see it. You have to make me a fucking believer. Brad Tavares, that takedown defense is fucking legitimate. Just like I said about Jose's, and that it's been, tested against the highest levels of opposition to make it legitimate. You understand what I'm saying to you? So I don't necessarily see Jung getting Tavares down to the ground, securing takedowns to be able to put him in compromisable positions, searching for the submission, to be able to find a submission to get the win inside the distance. I don't see it happening. Do I see him possibly, mixing in some takedown attempts to get Brad up against the motherfucking cage, much like Mario did? I don't see him mixing in 10 of them. Maybe he does mix in 10 of them, though. But I don't see him being able to hold Brad up against the cage for any amount of time, in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Brad's no chump. Brad's very strong. Brad's very powerful. Brad knows how to move. He's very explosive. You understand what I'm saying to you? He's a very athletic individual. You know what I mean? Very solid, very well-rounded. I like him, man. I like him a lot. I would thought that maybe the lines would be reversed and he would be like a minus 145 instead of a plus 145, but he's a plus 145, and I'll take advantage of it as far as dog plays go. He's deserving of a dog play in some way, shape, form, or fashion, very much so. You understand what I'm saying to you? And just is what it is, man. Not high on John, not high on the body of work he's been able to produce in any way, shape, form, or fashion against the individuals he's been able to produce it against. Main event, Brandon plus 165 against Tat minus 200. Again, this is when I did this earlier. Those money lines may have changed just a bit. Some of them may have changed significantly so. I'll see that in a few minutes when I get this parlay video together. You know what I'm talking about? But Tat is very much so the pick to get this one done in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I would not be surprised if he found a finish inside the distance via clipping and disconnecting, Brandon from his consciousness, hurting him, hopping on him for a club and sub type of situation inside the distance, or just getting him down to the ground, searching for the submission, putting him in a compromisable position, finding it, sinking it in, locking it up, and getting him out of there inside of the distance, via submission that way. Or if it just goes 25 minutes, I could see him winning this one via unanimous decision, 4 rounds to 1. Maybe it's 3 rounds to 2, but I personally believe it would be 4 rounds to 1, and that's if it goes 25 minutes, man. I like the youngin', you know what I mean? And unfortunately for Royval, in my personal opinion, this is a bad matchup for him, man. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. 13 fights. We back in the apex. It's Royval versus Taira, and it's gonna be going down, man. You know what I mean? It's going to be going down. A few more wake-ups. All questions are going to be answered. All underdogs that I like are just that, underdogs that I like. Underdogs, some of them more so, I feel are deserving so of a dog play in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But that's just from me. That does not have to be from you. You do not have to parlay those individuals up in any of your parlays in any way, shape, form, or fashion. You know what I'm talking about? But listen, I like Clayton over Lucas, but it is prospect versus prospect, and I have just chosen my side. I have picked my poison in this matchup, what I believe to be the individual who will produce the better all-around body of work over the course of 15 minutes. You know what I'm talking about? I like Cody over Dan, but again, this is very much prospect versus prospect. One prospect that I already know does not belong inside the UFC, and one prospect that I am anxious to see where his ceiling is inside the UFC. And I'm just deciding to side with that individual that I believe to be just a bit better absolutely everywhere as a mixed martial artist. You know what I'm talking about? So Clayton and Cody are the picks, but they are prospects versus prospects and individuals who have not yet been tested against real legitimate levels of opposition for us to be arguing their statistics. They should be minus 110, 110s, pick'ems, but they're not. So it is what it is, and we're on the favorites, man. I like Chris over Jr. for all the reasons I told y'all. I definitely like Nico over Themba for all the reasons I told y'all. But those are very much so underdogs, significant underdogs, some of the biggest underdogs on the card, and just 2 individuals that I personally believe are very much so deserving of a dog play in some way, shape, form, or fashion over here in the doghouse by me at the very least. You know what I'm talking about? Jonathan Pierce versus Pat Sabatini. I like Jonathan to be the one to get this one done in some way, shape, form, or fashion, hopefully via clipping and disconnecting Pat from his consciousness, or just keeping this fight upright and producing a better body of work over the course of 15 minutes. But every time a round comes to an end and another one comes to a start, a motherfucker holding a ticket for either one of these individuals is gonna be, right back to the start point, right back to being motherfucking, nervous all over again, because every time they restart this motherfucker, this shit could go a different way, in my personal opinion. But Jonathan's the pick. CJ and Rom, it very much is what it is. CJ might not even be a dog play in any way, shape, form, or fashion. You know what I'm talking about? Might, you know, maybe you just want to call it a dog or pass type of situation, so it's just a complete pass for y'all as far as over here is concerned, and go, you know, do your due diligence elsewhere with the other individuals that are going to dig deeper into this one for you and give you a better bit of insight. You know what I'm talking about? But Rom still has proven grounds to cover as far as I'm concerned, and doesn't belong being a significant sized favorite, almost near the minus 300 money line. He's 265 when I wrote this down. He might be bigger now. Coming into the motherfucking UFC, stop it. And with that being said, it's an individual making their UFC debut. Shouldn't be in your main bets and parlays anyway. You know what I'm talking about? Chitty and Jared, I don't want anything to do with this fight. Probably won't be a dog play in any way, shape, form, or fashion either. You understand what I'm saying to you? 13 fights. I don't even have to use this in a 10-leg, you know, Hail Mary toss. You know what I'm talking about? So, it is what it is. Jared's the pick. I could see it going either which way. But, another fight that should be minus 110 in my personal opinion. Jared, for what it's worth, has been up against a higher level of opposition, win, lose, or draw. And he is the better all-around mixed martial artist, in my personal opinion. But if it plays out on the motherfucking feet for 15 minutes, you know, they both risk getting clipped and disconnected from their consciousness, in my personal opinion. Maybe more so on the Jared side of things. Call it a complete pass, call it what you want. You know what I'm talking about? Josh versus Abdul. It's Abdul. D-Rod and Alex. Tread lightly, man. Be cautious. Be cautious. Don't be surprised. Let me put it like that. Don't be surprised about any outcome to this matchup. I'm siding with D-Rod. I'm rocking with D-Rod. I'm riding with D-Rod. And it might bite me in the motherfucking ass. You know what I'm talking about? Because Alex Morono is a dog. I'm just hoping not so much so in 2024 coming to the end of his road. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. Corey and Julia, tread lightly, man. Tread lightly. It's women's MMA. You know what I mean? Grant and Hoffa. Grant should get it done. Brad and John, tread lightly, man. Tread lightly. Tread lightly. In my personal opinion, this is the highest level of opposition that Jung's ever competed at against Brad Tavares, because Brad Tavares has undeniably faced a higher level of opposition, you know, in his run. So tread lightly, man, and Tat should get it done. But it is the main event, so if you're uncomfortable with that one, you know what I mean? It is what it is, man. That's that with that. Final talks, final thoughts, final lap. We ran through this motherfucker from bottom to top, back down to the bottom, back up to the top again. That's that with that, man. You know what I mean? I'm going to do a video tomorrow, probably a little 5-minute joint with my most confident picks. The parlay video is going to be coming in the early early AM for the prelims, main card, whole card. You know what I'm talking about? Haymakers, Hail Marys, dog plays, and all that good shit. You know what I'm talking about? And that'll be that with that, man. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that'll be that with that. So appreciate y'all for tapping in. It is what it is. Peace and blessings.